All right, so let's get started. So wherever you are in your homes or in your offices, wherever you are in the world, just beginning to allow your energy to land, your consciousness to land in your body in this moment. And just feeling your spine over your hips, your shoulders down your back, your heart open and softened. And breathing down the central channel of your body into your lower belly, your sacral, your hara. Invite the body to receive the breath. Deepening with each inhale and exhale. And connecting with our collective field. In this moment together, creating coherence, collective intention. And as we breathe, connecting our mind with the heart, we also connect all of our heart energies together as we open the space for quantum field medicine today. And on the next inhale, or whenever you're ready, coming back into our space together. All right. Welcome, everybody. It's so beautiful to see your faces and to be in the space again. Thank you for flowing with us. Life has been full, so we pushed this session a week, I think, for very divine reasons. And we were talking about the sovereign human, which Julie and I were chatting a bit before we got started. This could be days long, weeks long immersion, teaching, and just experiencing. There's so many different directions for this particular topic, but we'd like to start by just establishing the sovereign field as we just did in terms of conceptually. It's important to know that the human being is a sovereign field, that in this field, it is unified, it is multidimensional, it is a self-organizing, intelligent system that is designed to embody great vitality, health, consciousness, creativity, and that it's not necessarily, we talk about our body as a biological system, and indeed it is. And then in the spiritual communities, we talk about, well, we're a soul in human form, which we are. And this particular lens of sovereignty and the sovereign human brings all of the systems together in a unified field. So we can call it, or think of it as, the great integration of who we are. And that these systems work in synchrony together, whether we're talking about our nervous system with our energy bodies, or our soul blueprint with our biological body. They're not separate. They're interrelational, they are synchronistic, and they work together in synchrony. And this process of, we'll call it sovereignty reclamation, is about returning to the original blueprint, to the original design, and remembering that that has always been there and it's never left us. We've just been covered over through our traumas and through ancestral inheritances, through conditioning from our families of origin, from society, um, from systems based in fear and control. So it is synonymous with freedom reclamation, with embodying and returning to the essence of our liberation. And it's very multi-layered because we're all highly conditioned. So we have to move down this path of sovereignty reclamation with great self-compassion for ourselves as a human, that we are imperfectly perfect. We will, move through life hearing the voice of our mother or father, driving us and making decisions out of survival and fear at times. I mean, this is just part of the human condition. And so that part is really important, I feel, because it can be easy to spiritually bypass a lot of what we experience as human, but it's all sacred, it's all potent, it's all important, and it's all in the unified experience. So we invite you to really open into a beginner's mind, during the session, but of course in day-to-day life, because that beginner's mind, that deep self-compassion for all that we experience is essential to really have grace, for ourselves in this process. So establishing that the human being is a sovereign field, unified, multidimensional, self-organizing, an intelligent system that has the knowing of how to be healthy and vital and creative in this world. So feeling into, we're speaking to you and you're in your body in this moment, really as we move through this, inviting you to continue to feel the energy of your body as you receive the information as well. So there's all of this information is transmission. And even through teaching, you can really begin to and continue to download and embody what the truth of sovereignty is in your own life and your own experience. So moving into clearing, it's important to understand how to clear distortion, in your field as we're moving more into this sovereign realm of embodiment. So knowing and becoming aware, so bringing subconscious and unconscious material into conscious awareness, where fear still operates, for example. Where does fear still operate? Where are we still acting or reacting out of fear? Perhaps it's subtle, perhaps it's obvious. And that inquiry throughout our lives, throughout the day, can help to excavate what are some residual roots to really work with, to really alchemize. And it takes to do that, it's taking the alternative action. Okay, I'm noticing the fear-based thought or belief come up or impulse. How would I act? How would I respond from a place of sovereignty, freedom? What would the most sovereign aspect of me say or do in this moment? So maybe it's, oh, this opportunity came into my field and I feel like I need to ask permission from someone outside of myself. Or, gosh, I want to take this, I want to make this move in my business or my career. I feel residual fear. And then we begin polling everybody in our lives, to see if it's a good move. Those are simple human examples of how we may outsource our sovereignty by moving from a place of fear. Now, it's good to consult. We are relational beings, but where do we outsource our sovereignty instead of truly diving in and listening to what we already know is true. So really understanding as well that sovereignty, what does that actually mean? What does sovereignty actually mean? So sovereignty means self-governing. It means that your system has its own intelligence. It's an internal authority that is not dependent on external input, and it knows what it needs, it knows what is true, and it knows what belongs and what doesn't belong. The immune system is a fantastic expression of this. It doesn't ask for permission to recalibrate itself, to, fight imbalance in the body. It reads the field and it responds with precision. And that's an example of sovereignty in biological form. You're not consciously choosing or thinking, how do I heal this wound or this gash on my arm? Your body automatically knows how to heal that. So sovereignty is self-governing. The second is sovereignty is also self-correcting. So every living system carries an intelligence of its own restoration, which is why we're seeing at the forefront so much energy around regenerative medicine, around root cause medicine, root cause healing. Because as conscious humans, we are seeing the truth of our sovereignty, and then we're bringing that into different industries, whether we're talking about the industry of health and wellness or medicine, whether we're talking about business. We're unplugging from the darker systems of fear and control in order to create sovereign businesses. Even when it comes to financial systems, right? How can we create revenue streams and have our own wealth and currency from a sovereign place? It is not compartmentalized. It touches every aspect of life. And that's where we are now. And that's why, we even created quantum field medicine, because this is the new, it's really not new. We're remembering our sovereignty in the healing space. So we're bringing this forward so people can continue to reclaim their sovereignty and remember that restoration is inherently part of your blueprint. So sovereignty is self-correcting. We talked about the wound. And yeah, without conscious instruction of the mind, which is so beautiful. If you think about how we as humans self-correct in our own lives, whether we're leaving a relationship, whether we're, moving into a more evolved way of working and living in the world, living in community, we're constantly in this place of evolution. Sovereignty is also self-referencing, which is a really interesting term, I would say. When I say self-referencing, I mean that it moves from the inside out, not from the outside in. So the default mode of living and responding to life is from this inner place of, we can call it even soul referencing, inner referencing, self-referencing. What is arising in this moment as I'm in this decision-making, time in my life? And that self-referencing is moving back to the truth that you know what is best for you. You know what is most aligned for your own health, vitality, abundance, expansion. And that's a really vital knowing and remembrance. So you can locate the inner authority within yourself without perpetually scanning outside of yourself for permission, validation, or instruction. And again, yes, we learn from things and people and books externally, but where is the predominant operating system functioning from? That self-referencing, the soul referencing is core. And then sovereignty is coherent. If you think about the energy of coherence and harmony and homeostasis, all the systems are moving in synchrony with one another in an organized and communicative way, operating as one unified intelligence, which is why being in nature is probably the best teacher of sovereignty, of coherence. You know, the ayahuasca vine doesn't ask for permission from the other plants around it to grow. She just knows who she is. You know, she grows with robustness and power without effort. And so I look, you know, if you look at the magnificence of the flowers blooming, there's no, you know, there, of course, there's no ego, there's no permission, there's no, oh, I shouldn't open so wide because maybe the plant next to me will get jealous, you know? She just does. And so we can be reminded of our sovereignty in nature, I feel like most powerfully, um, in our medicine, you know, in our unique frequency, the blueprint, the snowflake, the thumbprint that we are, living that in the fullest expression is the greatest gift to the world, truly. Yeah, so sovereignty is not something you build, it's a ground state. So if we can even visualize a pyramid in the forefront of our mind, sovereignty is the base. It just is. You know, it's a ground state, it's the original design. So we can train our consciousness and our mind to embody that. Then we can move through life from there. We can build our lives from there. And then what's built on top of the foundation of sovereignty becomes in deep alignment with our soul's blueprint, what we came here to do, our mission, our work in the world. So it's interesting. I was actually with a client last night, and she's a client based in Singapore, and she works for an oil and gas company, and does very, very well financially. She's has a very generally happy, healthy life, but she's really mastered that chapter of her life where she worked really hard and was kind of on this grind to create financial independence for herself and for her family. And so she's in a very profound sovereignty reclamation process, 3 decades at this company. And so I'm bringing this up because we can all relate to the evolution of identity, right? So our identity has to evolve with our sovereignty as well. She's in a very deep reprogramming process around unplugging her identity from the role as executive in this system and the patterns that are associated with that system, the scheduling and the rigorousness. And so inevitably, just in my own kind of anecdotal data and experience, when we're in a very deep sovereignty reclamation process, there's a befriending of spaciousness that we invite, because we're so even addicted and attached to content. What is the next meeting? What is the next creation? What is the next goal? But the spaciousness is what we truly subconsciously deprivilege, when actually it is where the creations are birthed, or the most aligned creations are birthed. So it's an invitation for all of us, including, myself and Julie. It's like, especially when you're connected with your mission, you can be like, go, go, go. So how can we befriend our relationship with spaciousness in this era of reclaiming and embodying our sovereignty? And how, and this is why I feel like the last session is just such a fascinating topic to me, the identity field. How can we evolve our identity in a way that allows sovereignty to be our natural state, our default mode. And what that inevitably means is decentralizing ourselves, decentralizing the ego, really getting past being defined by the roles that we carry. And I feel like there's some wonderful researchers and books and studies around the science of sovereignty. One of the books that I love is The Biology of Belief, especially when we're talking about the mind and how we embody beliefs and how they play out in our lives. So Bruce Lipton on epigenetics, and really understanding that, it's not necessarily genes that determine our biology. The environment signals the genes, right? And the most powerful environment, lives in the cells and is in the field of perception. The beliefs and the emotional signals that are broadcasted by the nervous system come from the morphogenetic field. And that we have agency over that. And that's the beautiful thing. And collectively, when we work with sovereignty together and we have these very candid, open, honest conversations, we amplify the field of sovereignty more than tenfold. So understanding that, the coherence in our heart field is the most powerful energy center in our bodies. And that's why we begin with heart coherence together in this session. Because whatever I think of it as it's like a fertile garden, if you will. What are we planting into the heart field? If we really tune in, what is our heart, our soul's deepest intentions? What are we so, lit up about growing in the world? And how can we work together and co-create that as we see the different plants and fungi in nature, creating a system to co-create what we're meant to leave on the earth as our legacy. And so it begins with, well, one, choosing that path, the path of sovereignty, and then doing the inner work to reprogram the subconscious mind and to create more coherence in our respective fields, in the heart field, and beginning to really get the human embodiment online with the soul blueprint so we can live our sovereignty forward. So we can also talk about quantum coherence, that all of that coherence that lives at the subatomic level, and that has been identified in the living systems. So a great example of this is photosynthesis, which runs on quantum coherence. And DNA repair shows signatures, also quantum level coherence and coordination. So it's important to understand the human body is not a classical machine running on Newtonian chemistry. It really is a quantum biological system in which information travels faster than molecular diffusion allows. So it's organized by something that precedes and governs the chemistry. And so, we say energy moves first, tissues move next. So, and a lot of times, and this has actually been my experience in this lifetime at least, is it's like my soul is pushing forward. And so there's always been like my body and like the physical life is catching up to what my soul already knows. So there's been this kind of interesting, at times like lag time between physical world and where the energy already is, what has already happened in the future. So, so that's, as we're creating in the world and as we're in our sovereign reclamation phases and chapters, it's important to understand to give ourselves grace to allow the physical body, the material world, the physical creations of what we're putting forth to catch up with what the energy is, what the intention is, and what the morphogenetic field is that we are creating. So, and there's so much more. I'm going to pause there. And shift it over to Julie. Well, actually, do you want to go into, so let's go into, before we do that, we'll kind of reset here and just moving into your breath. And, we've been sharing a lot. So just taking a pause here to absorb the field and come back together in this coherence. And then Julie, whenever you're ready, you can.
Amazing. Thank you, Lena. Yes, the sovereignty side is such a vast topic, and there's so many layers to go into. But, being a sovereign human, sovereignty reclamation, this is our power. This is our original divine template. It's not a concept. It is the template that we came in with, and it's the template finally remembering itself. We are the being who no longer operates inside the old matrix of, like Lena was saying, permissions, diagnoses, external authorities, but it lives as the living, breathing, self-regulating source field itself. So in quantum sovereign field medicine, the sovereign human is the new standard of health, and a being whose personal quantum field is unbreakable, it's self-organizing, and it's directly connected to source. There's no intermediaries, no interferences, there's no permissions, outside permissions. It's just pure, intelligent, living light flowing through every layer of the body, the soul, and the mission. So when we get to that point of sovereignty reclamation, this is a human who has reclaimed what we would call the 0-point sovereign field. This is the permanent collapse of all reversal grids, implants, overlays, hooks, external control patterns. This is where your field becomes a living temple that it heals, it regenerates, and it co-creates in real time. So, how I work with this with quantum in the energy science world, this is a living architecture that makes the sovereign human possible. It is a bridge between ancient temple technology and the future now of quantum field medicine. So, every transmission, every technology, every protocol that we design, it's designed to return the human to their pure sovereign state. The vault, which many of you have experienced on the cryogenetic side, and some of you deeper transmissions. So this is the intelligent, self-evolving heart, the heart coherence, as Lena was speaking about, of the sovereign human experience. It doesn't treat you, the vault doesn't treat you. It scans, it remembers, it transmits the exact living codes that your particular field is asking for across your DNA, your plasma, cryogenetics, your emotions, ancestral and galactic layers. This is the medicine that honors your sovereignty at every breath. The pyramid cities, which is, another portion of work that I'm involved with and that Lena's involved with. So this is more of a macro expression of the sovereign human made visible on Earth. So, the pyramid cities that are coming up, these are not just cities, they are living morphogenetic templates where thousands of sovereign humans are going to be able to co-create in a unified field coherence. The cities themselves, they become planetary scale sovereign fields, and they are anchoring in the new Earth grid through ley lines, dragon lines, stargates, and collective remembrances. And there will be many community developments that we're going to start to see as, I would say, more sovereign reclamation is happening on the morphic field. We're going to start to see more of these start to anchor in, and this is where we're going to continue, our sovereign reclamation. But the morphogenetic and the morphic field connection, touching in on that a little bit. So the morphogenetic field, so this is your personal divine blueprint, the eternal template of the sovereign human. So when we activate things like, the mirror chamber, the plasma vault, Stargate technologies, we are literally rewriting and restoring the original blueprint at the field level, your personal field level. And then we move into the morphic field. So we're getting out a little bit more on the macro side. This is a collective memory that has shaped humanity for millennia. We've been talking about the morphic field. So through our work, we're not just healing, individuals, but we are collapsing the old morphic field of limitation, of illness, dis-ease, separation, and simultaneously birthing a new planetary morphic field of sovereignty, regeneration, and unified consciousness. So every time a sovereign human steps into their field, through the vault, through a mirror chamber, through Lena's work, through others' work that is in alignment, the ripple becomes exponential. So you're not just healing yourself, you are recoding the entire morphic field of Earth and making sovereignty the new normal for the collective. So we can imagine, if we had children uh, learning about sovereignty and we were teaching sovereignty in schools at a very young age, and imagine the impact that that would have, as we trickle down the line. And so we're going to start to see this more and more. We're going to start to see more conversations about legacy. We're going to start to see more conversations about source field, and about sovereignty reclamation. This is what is anchoring in right now. Us being here on this call, we're affecting that morphic field, and there are many others who are doing the same.
And just taking a moment to breathe down into your heart, connecting with the source of your own heart energy, which is the source of the universal heart, the place where we create from, we relate from, we move from. And honoring this sovereign field of medicine, of connection, of community, of unwavering support. Honoring each beautiful being on this call and all of those in our realms, in our orbits that will touch far beyond this moment. And may we bring this light into each step, each breath that we take. Deep bow of gratitude to each of you.
Thank you all so much. I know we have our next session. What do we have next week or a couple weeks?
On the 12th. So we'll stay with the bi-weekly rhythm from here. So our next session's on June 12th. And Julie, what's our
I thought I just wrote it down.
our topic?
Right here, sorry.
You're good.
I wrote it down, but apparently it disappeared off my paper.
Okay, I got it.
Intelligent integration.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, God. I was just going to say, we just decided to not do the broadcast this session because sovereignty was such a deep, expansive conversation. We really wanted to touch in with everybody on, how you've been experiencing sovereignty. So we'll do, another plasma broadcast on our next session for you guys to experience. Yes, just honoring each of you. Deeply grateful for everybody being on this call and very grateful for all of your energies. So
thank you. It was really nice to talk and see everybody and feel the energies. I've actually been playing 432 hertz throughout the whole session.
Right. We'll see everybody hopefully in a couple of weeks. We'll send out the replay. You want to connect with that. And as always, Julie and I are open and available if you need anything and have any questions. So have a beautiful weekend, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Yes. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.